Well, I'm Scott Drake with my guest, retired Superior Court Judge in California, Eugene M. Hyman. Today we're talking about a new study of 7th grade students revealing that many 7th graders are dating and experiencing physical, psychological, and electronic dating violence. More than 1 in 3 students surveyed report being a victim of psychological dating violence, and nearly 1 in 6 report being a victim of physical dating violence. Judge Hyman, welcome back.
Thank you.
We're talking, when you talk about, there's 3 kinds of dating violence that they're talking about here, and I guess let's frame that and let's explain exactly what constitutes that.
Well, first of all, when we're talking about 7th graders and dating, their definition of dating isn't always what adults would consider a traditional, quote, dating relationship, quote. For them, dating can be hanging out, but you're someone sort of special, you're sort of exclusive in the sense that maybe you text only one person, maybe you Facebook in terms of sharing secrets kinds of things. I mean, when I was a kid, you kind of called a best friend, but now it's sort of dating, and the difference, I think, is exclusivity. But what's also interesting about this study is that there is a certain amount of, quote, traditional, quote, dating in the sense of what we would consider to be physical intimacy of various kinds. As a former juvenile judge, it doesn't surprise me, or it wouldn't surprise me, that a certain percentage of this population is having physical intimacy, also known as sexual activity, although I imagine that percentage-wise that's a small amount. But that there is, even without any kind of physical relationship, there's still a significant amount of relationship kinds of problems, everything from the psychological in terms of people saying inappropriate things to one another, or texting abuse or Facebook abuse, and culminating in a very small percentage of the cases with physical inappropriate hitting of various kinds. So that was surprising to me because when I officiated over the Juvenile Domestic Violence and Family Violence Court in St. Clair County, we were dealing predominantly with females who were victims, probably age 14, and batterers were usually about 16. So this suggests, and maybe this has always been the case, and we just didn't know it, that it's younger and younger. And perhaps at one level that shouldn't be surprising because we know that there's substance abuse and drinking that are going on with this age group. So it probably makes sense that there's other kinds of things for which we should be concerned that are also occurring with this age group.
So talk about maybe the connection, because as you say, the battering or the physical abuse typically happens with males as they approach 16, but we're seeing, you know, boys hitting adolescence at the age of 13. Is there a connection in the study that the kinds of like texting violence and Facebook kind of violence will lead to some physical violence later on?
Well, again, it's behavior. It's controlling behavior. A couple of things which we don't know yet, but I suspect will come out as they continue to study, is what kinds of families these children are coming from. Is there domestic violence occurring in their family? And I suspect that if you see a child who is exhibiting power and control kinds of behavior, which can be physical or it also can be the psychological kind of abuse with respect to texting and with respect to Facebook, I would think there'd be a very high correlation between that and the fact that the child is living in a family where there is domestic violence happening to that child's parents. With respect to those persons that are the recipients of that kind of behavior, there, I would expect, would be a higher incidence or causal relationship between those women and also living in a family where the mother is probably being abused. But the other thing that's interesting in this is in terms of predominantly the study was done through a program that is interested in prevention, that is in terms of teaching young people what a healthy relationship looks like. And I've been saying for a long time that unfortunately schools, while need to start addressing problems that traditionally were dealt with by traditional families, but when you consider that divorce and separation, 50% or so throughout the United States, so there isn't a, quote, traditional family in at least 50% of the cases anymore. Mm-hmm. And as a result, whether we like it or not, schools are going to have to be leading not only with respect to substance abuse, but with respect to relationship education. What does a healthy relationship look like? Mm-hmm. Because the average kid doesn't have a good example anymore. They're living in a single-parent home. The other concern, or the other interesting factor, is that because this is predominantly an educational program, is what happens when, as a result of the programming, they discover that someone is experiencing this kind of abuse. They do have relationships with providers to provide intervention to persons that are experiencing this kind of abuse. They're very careful, and rightfully so. They don't want to do labeling. They don't want to label a recipient of abuse as a victim, mm-hmm. And they don't want to label a person who is inappropriate psychologically or physically as a batterer. And I think that that's a smart thought in terms of being concerned about that. Now, they will provide services. They view everything as a teachable moment. And I think, again, because of that age group, I think it's appropriate. Once they become, 14 or older, I can assure you that in a lot of jurisdictions, it's going to be treated by the juvenile justice system, and they're going to, potentially be prosecuted. But at the age group that we're talking about, 11 and 12 and 13-year-olds, it's appropriate to try not to get them into the system. Right. In California, any child 12 years or older is able to, on their own, without the need of the appointment of someone as a guardian ad litem, can apply for a restraining order, assuming that they're able to prove that someone is harassing them, as defined in each of the various states. They're able to get a restraining order at age 12. And that is a strategy if someone is being abused. It isn't something I would want to jump to for the first time, even if something would support that. I like to see other kinds of intervention worked out if possible. Mm-hmm. But if, in fact, it isn't working, then it is appropriate to go for a restraining order. And if it's bad enough, it's appropriate to involve the juvenile authorities. Although with a person that young, mm-hmm. I doubt very seriously that there would actually be a filing. It would be something that would be done informally by a probation officer. But I wouldn't like to see a case referred unless it was absolutely necessary.
I guess in closing, some of the encouraging things about this study is, one, the surprising thing is that kids are dating at a fairly young age here, but that for some reason they are able to talk to their parents about dating, and that does sound like at least a good start. Is the big message here is that really we need to start addressing this problem in middle school, and if not earlier, maybe elementary school?
Absolutely. And I think that not only with respect to dating or relationships, more so than dating is relationships, what do healthy relationships look like? Right. Because most of us, in terms of dating and marriage and child rearing, look to our parents, and if our parents didn't get it right, that's a problem. Yeah. But the other concern that I have besides that, and I agree with you that one thing that was encouraging is that kids are talking to their parents, is that there's all these ads that indicate that are pretty good with respect to substance abuse. Either you talk to your children about drugs, or the drug dealers will, and we need to have a similar kinds of public messaging with respect to talking to your children mm-hmm. about safety. And unfortunately, those kids that are more apt to wind up in the juvenile justice system are usually those kids that don't have involved parents. Having said that, I'm not suggesting that parents that are sometimes working literally two jobs to keep a roof over. I certainly understand why they aren't able to be there as much as I know they would like to be. But that absence of a parent is critical in terms of having adverse consequences. And if you have an involved parent, you're more likely to have appropriate interventions that don't involve the juvenile justice system.
All right, very good. Judge Hyman, thank you so much.
Thank you.
This is the Family Law Channel, a part of the Legal Broadcast Network.